Okay, so I just checked out the brand new horror film called Shortcut, which was released on VOD on Friday, and I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. This is one of those horror movies that, unless you're a really hardcore horror fan, you won't even know is coming out. But if you do see this film on one of your VOD platforms, definitely give it a watch if you're a hardcore horror fan. Now, I guess the best way I can describe Shortcut is it's Jeepers Creepers meets The Breakfast Club. You basically have this group of misfit students, kind of almost led by Reggie, played by Zach Sutcliffe, who's the kid that thinks he's the tough kid. He sits at the back of the bus and he kind of demands respect from everybody else. There's your little bit of an idiot, Carl, played by Xander M. Lano, and there's Nolan, who's kind of the sensitive kid that has a little bit of a crush on one of the girls, played by Jack Kane. Then there are the two girls, Bess, played by Sophie Jane Oliver, and Queenie, played by Molly Dew. Now, they're on a bus trip with their school, and the bus is being driven by Joseph, a kind-hearted old bus driver, played by Terrence Anderson. Now, earlier on in this whole thing, they kind of run into a cop called Chris, played by Andre Claude, and he tells them about a killer that's out there that is a serial killer, basically, and he's killing teenagers, and that character's played by David Keyes. Now, of course, as luck would have it, these teenagers and Joseph on the bus end up coming across this serial killer, and he ends up on the bus, and this is probably where this movie really starts to pick up, because it's quite intense, the scenes with the serial killer on the bus. Even though these kids are like a rat bag kind of group of kids, by the time this guy does get on the bus, which is not very long into the film, you already are starting to like these kids. You don't want to see anything happen to them. And David Keyes plays the serial killer so well that you do feel like these kids are in danger. But that is only part of the danger, because not long after the serial killer ends up in the bus, we end up meeting for the first time the creature of this creature feature, a creature that is not really referred to by name so much in the film, but on IMDb is referred to as the Night Wanderer, and it's a pretty vicious kind of creature, and the body count starts to rise very, very early on. Now, I think one of the things that I really loved about this movie was the atmosphere that director Alessio Ligari ends up creating with this film, because it's a pretty basic horror film. It's if you've ever seen Jeepers Creepers, I wasn't using that analogy simply because of anything other than the fact that these films are very similar, in the sense that these are kids on a bus and all of a sudden they find themselves the victim of this creature. It's a very simplistic storyline, and part of the reason why the film works is because of Ligari's brilliant atmosphere that he creates with the film, but also Daniel Kosky, the screenwriter's great screenplay, in which you actually do like these kids from a very early start. It's kind of like Attack the Block in that sense, that these kids, they're almost the kind of kids that in a lot of movies they would almost be like considered the bad kids, especially two of them. But Kosky's screenplay just makes you like these kids, and it's really funny because with one of the characters, the character I referred to before, that like is supposed to be the bad egg, Reggie, there's a bit later on in this film where they kind of like talk a little bit about his family life, and you kind of get to see a little bit why he's the way that he is. But having said that, you already kind of like him from the start. Even though he is the tough kid, and you could say he's the bully, you see that he's kind of brave, even when the stuff is happening on the bus before the kids even get off the bus. So you kind of like him from the start. There's also, I have to say the same thing for the setup of the character of Carl. If you remember, I didn't really like Deadpool 2 because of the kid that I thought was so annoying. And they could have done the same thing with the character of Carl here, but they don't. They kind of write Carl in such a way that, yeah, he's a little bit of a loudmouth, and you see a flashback scene where he's kind of bragging to the cop about how he took down like 8 kids in this fight, and you know it's all crap. You know that he's making it up, but it just works, and it really, really enhances his character. There's another great scene in this film when the kids discover the tunnel, and Carl's just being Carl. He's sitting there with his fake drum kit, playing drums and making sounds, and it's annoying all of the other kids. But at the same time, you know that's Carl, and that's the way he deals with things. So I really love the fact that that the screenplay allows for the kids to each have their own kind of characterization. The same with the girls. The girls are so vastly different. One is kind of quiet, and she likes Nolan. The other girl is like the geeky girl kind of thing. But they use them so well in the film. I cannot say that this film treats its female characters in a judgmental way, because the girls are just as brave in this film as the guys, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like this film. So often, especially with American films, you have American horror films, the girls just end up being scream fodder, and I'm kind of glad that that's not the case in this film, and that the female characters are two of the strongest characters. Even the geeky character, she ends up becoming one of the heroes of the story. The bit that I thought was a little bit awkward was dealing with the kind of side story that happens here, where the characters learn more about the Night Wanderer because of something that they find that's been left by this guy called Guilo Sarpi. I thought that was almost a little bit too convenient. There perhaps needed to be something else in there to make that a little bit more interesting. I also thought the character of the Night Wanderer, love the creature and love the creature effects, but maybe there could have been like a little bit of folklore that the kids learn about this creature, rather than just all of a sudden coming across it when their bus breaks down. I mean, if you remember back to Jeepers Creepers, there was a great folklore there about the character, and that's not really the case here in the film. Look, this film is brilliantly set up for a sequel, and I think I would actually be kind of excited to see a sequel. More so because I'd like to see what Alessio Lugari does with this film if it ever turned into a franchise. He's a director now that I actually want to go back and look for his past couple of films, because I thought, well, this is an interesting enough horror film, and I'd like to see some of his other work. The same with Koski, the writer. Love to see some of the other screenplays that have been written by them as well, because I think, like I said, I love the characterization in this film. As many of you would know, I watch a lot of horror movies. Like I'm at Monster Fest every year, and it's one of my favorite times of the year. Love my horror, and to actually see a horror movie about teenagers where there's been some characterization given to the kids, gotta say that I absolutely I love that. So look, I'm going to give Shortcut 3.5 out of 5. Definitely not a waste of time if you want to check out a great little horror. And if you are a horror buff, then you definitely want to check out Shortcut, and you definitely want to check out the work of Alessio Lugari. But for me, it's 3.5 out of 5 for Shortcut.